One of the things we want to show you today is how to mount some of the various components and how to remove some of the components that you need to work on to integrate the TurboLogix EV into the CMC board and also into the CMC control panel. You don't need a lot of tools. You need probably a 5/16 nut driver and a flat blade screwdriver and also a Phillips head screwdriver. Those are probably the only three tools that you need to use to work with this. May also need a pair of wire cutters and some strippers because we're going to reuse some of the power wiring that's already inside the control panel. First things that have to go on your system are going to be the bezel and the HMI. Basically, the bezel is attached with, looks like about 10 screws, and you basically remove these screws from the back and the bezel just pops off. Okay, that's all you have to do. Next thing that you'll be doing is taking out the operator interface. Now, there's a couple of things that you have to remember. There's 2 or 3 versions of the operator interface with different connectors on there, but they're all pluggable. Okay, so you can go in and just pull these plugs out of the back of the operator interface. Now, the operator interface is mounted with 6 screws or 6 nuts, and in that situation, that's where you take your nut driver and then you would remove these nuts from the door. So we reach in, and the operator interface will pop right out just like that. So now you have an open hole, all right? And this is where your bezel and your operator interface, your new TurboLogix operator interface will be mounted, will be right in this area right here. And now you've got an open hole in the door and it's time to mount your bezel that will hold the TurboLogix operator interface in place. Now, if you remember, I mentioned earlier, there's actual holes that are pre-punched, okay? And they match up with these 6 holes on the side that were there for the original bezel that we've just removed. Just to do a real quick show of this or how to mount this, basically you'll end up putting your 6 screws or holding your bezel up there as such, putting your 6 screws in place, mounting them into the holes, and that's pretty much all that you have to do, and now the bezel's mounted. And you got a nice large opening now. Now what I've gone and done is there's 2 sources of power up on the door that you can utilize to power your operator interface. One of them comes off the old BCM communication connector. And typically all you have to do is go down there and find the cable that's got the black and white wire, and they'll typically be marked 10-4B and 10-5W. And the B and W stands for black and white. Now, 10-4B is a power wire. That's your 24 volts DC. And your ground or return wire for the 24 volts is going to be the white wire. That's kind of Ingersoll Rand standard. Black is hot, white is always going to be a neutral on the 24 volt DC systems. So what I normally do is I just will cut those 2 wires off there, and then I'll go up here and I'll basically take a wiring tool, and we'll remove the sheathing on that, and we'll expose those wires, and we'll just reuse them to power the operator interface. Well, then what do you do with the others? The other 2 connectors, one of them is communication wiring, the other one is your other power wiring that goes to BCM. Since these are 2 wires that come up to the same location, there's a very good chance that they're going to be utilized to power not only this connector, but also jump down to another source of power, which in this situation is going to be this guy right here, which was the BCM power. So you want to leave that in place and connect it up in that way. This wire can disappear. If you want to, you can cut that off and terminate it. But anyway, you'll have your 2 power sources up here. You can utilize that wire, but it's easiest just to utilize this one because it's already in place. What I want to show you is the operator panel or the interface bezel that goes on front of the mounting plate up there. And as we mentioned earlier, this is our power connections here. Our LAN connection or Ethernet connection to connect up the PLC is located in that location. And then also there's our memory device that we plug into the back of the USB port. It's located here. Now, what I normally do is pre-mount the display on the plate. And basically you'll have these attachments that will come with the operator interface in its box. So you just slide the operator interface in place and take these screws and these little washers that they've created here, put those in place and tighten that up, and then you've got basically everything already pre-mounted on your plate so that can go onto the door. So the next thing you'll do is you'll just mount that up in place here. As I mentioned earlier, we'll put the plate on and it's tightened up with the 4 screws. So that's all mounted in place, and so we're ready to go inside the panel and look at what needs to be done. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, you could reuse 2 of these wires and use those to wire in for your power. So we just basically use a set of wire strippers and go in and remove those wires. Okay, those tags come off of that, and then we'll end up taking that and we'll attach that into the connections right there.